Oh, suddenly.
You're watching PBS. We are in the future, ladies and gentlemen. We are here in the future. Days of future past. And AEW's revolution took place, and what a revolution it was. There was fighting in the streets.
There were fighting.
There were fighting in the streets. And people will never be the same. You say you want a revolution.
Well,
this is your show.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to realize that. About halfway through the fucking time travel, I was waiting for you to realize that. But yeah, I gotta tell the reason why we had to consume the entirety of the, I can't say magnitude of possibly the minitude of Revolution, and take our underdog super energy pills and a good deep breath to talk about this chaos that if this was wrestling school, we could literally do 2-3 weeks of classes on everything that if you were a wrestler or a wrestling promotion, you wouldn't want to fucking do. And they did it in front of the biggest crowd they will have in the United States this year. And I guess for a spectacle of something to watch while you're there in a building that you paid for, they enjoyed it. It's not like it wasn't the WWE syndrome where they pay incredible amounts of money in large numbers and then sit there and get an hour and a half of action in 4 hours. We got about 6 hours of action in 4 hours.
In front of that notoriously mostly subdued Greensboro audience.
I don't know if I'd put Greensboro in the Coliseum next to the Nassau Coliseum in Long Island as subdued audience, but they finally had crowd shots. They had 16,000 people in Greensboro. Bless their little pea-picking hearts. And I would save it for the examination of the Buckaroos match, but really it's a show-long, company-wide theme. The Buckaroos are the poster boys because of their Killing the Business Incorporated, right? And they popularized this tomfoolery. But it applies to everything on this show. Killing the business is not a joke. It's been happening for the past 20 years. Because I don't care what company it is or what promotion it is. Think about this. When you have people surviving hand grenades and rocket launchers and poison gas and fucking ballistic missiles and stabbing and shooting and fucking anal protrusion with a goddamn metal poker.
No, that's DDT. That's not here.
All right, over and over again. And it's mostly meaningless people that are doing it that aren't over in the overall scheme of things, or in the case of the main event here, and in the case of a couple of the matches, people who actually got over at one point in time by doing none of this shit. Here's how it kills the business. And slowly, subliminally, it's like a growing cancer. 50 years ago, 44 years ago, 48 years ago. I'm trying to do the math right. 48 years ago, Bruno Sammartino and Stan Hansen drew 40,000 people to Shea Stadium off of actually a clothesline, a lariat. Because what happened was, in their match, Hansen went to fucking slam Bruno. Bruno went up for a regular slam. Hansen went up for the over-the-shoulder slam he'd been doing because he was greener than a pepper tree at that point. And Bruno landed on his head and broke his neck. And Bruno knew that he was fucked pretty instantly. They went to the finish. Hansen shot him off and gave him the lariat. And it was not one of the finer bumps ever taken off a lariat because, as I mentioned, Bruno already knew he's fucked up. Hansen told me himself, he said as soon as he went back to the locker room, he didn't really know anything. And Vince Sr. came in, and the first words out of his mouth were, "You hurt Bruno." And Hansen said his heart fell out of his asshole. But, I mean, those were fighting words in them days. The golden goose, right? But the people, because it was Bruno, they blamed the lariat, not a botched body slam. Because it was Bruno and they believed him because he was out of the ring for 2 months. Obviously, he didn't wrestle anywhere because he didn't wrestle anywhere. And they rushed him back to Shea Stadium for the fucking grudge match and they had pictures of him in the hospital. Stan Hansen broke Bruno's neck with a clothesline. They drew 40,000 people. And then Hansen had to leave the territory because old women were attacking him on the subway. "You hurt Bruno!"
Oh, I don't think it was the old women that were the upset fans he was running from.
No, I mean, they had to get it. No, he was causing right. They had to get him out of there in the building. But I'm saying he had old women accosting him if he'd take the subway in New York or wherever the fuck. He just had to leave. But the point is,
watch out for old women and anyone friends with Jilly Rizzo.
There you go. Because you know that you're alluding to something. There were some fucking threats made until Bruno had to put the word out, right? No, let's not take care of it that way.
I'll do it myself with my Bruno punch.
Yeah. Can you imagine the mob now being in modern day times being upset about a fucking wrestler getting hurt? We'll take care of him. No, stick me.
See, that's what you definitely don't want to hear say, "You hurt Bruno."
Yeah.
Then you're in trouble.
But anyway, the subliminal killing of the business. I know it's 50 years later, and I'm not suggesting that we can hospitalize somebody from a clothesline for 2 months or whatever the fuck. But the point remains that when you have main event, and it hurts the WWE too. Because any fan that sees an exhibition like what went on with AEW, and then watches the big boys, yes, they see the big stars, and yes, they still get into it, but subliminally, when they do an angle, or when there's an angle done anywhere, or even in the same company in AEW, what are they going to do for an angle now? Goddamn Agent Orange? It doesn't register even when the main event people do it, even when the people you care about do it, even when the biggest stars in the business do it, because slowly you will eat away and erode away, which is why now the WWE is doing better than they have done in years by drawing a quarter of the viewership they had 20 years ago. That is why AEW now considers themselves a rating success, because they are drawing somewhere a little over half of what TNA was doing on Spike 15 years ago. We're eroding the audience because even if goddamn The Rock and Cody Rhodes do some horrible fucking super duper Spanish fly up the ass off the top rope, leading to a hospitalization angle, somebody's going to say, yeah, but that fucking guy on the other show was 180 pounds with rocks in his pockets. Well, he dove off a 15-foot ladder through goddamn 6 panes of glass into goddamn chairs on concrete. So he's still okay. Come to think of it, he finished the match.
And I think that Orange Cassidy may be the masked Agent Orange.
And there you go. Boy, he's noxious. We got that going for him. But that's what I'm saying. It's a slow, gradual numbing of the audience's mind and an erosion of anything you can do with main event talent for value of selling tickets and or drawing money or increasing interest when you let every one of these jack-off juvenile delinquents go out there and masturbate themselves to their heart's content in their favorite fucking fantasy wrestling scenario. And that pretty much encapsulates this whole fucking show. So now we can go through it piece by piece.
Oh, I thought that was the review. All right. Well, this is AEW Revolution from Greensboro, North Carolina. A sold-out crowd, 16,000 plus, approximately.
To see to see one thing. All they had to get right, they had one job. Give Sting a retirement match and then give him a great send-off. And let all of it make the air. But anyway, we started out with another legendary figure who's been reduced to this. Christian Cage defending the TNT title against Danny Garcia. And Christian was accompanied by, of course, by Dino Douche, Nick Plain, and Nick Plain's mom. And when Tony Khan gets fascinated with a bland indie guy, he goes all the way with it. So this was our opening match, and I don't know what to say. A star had a match with an indie guy that can do the moves, and Christian Cage works hard, and this was a long TV match with no commercials. I'm sorry, and Garcia, in OVW, we could have used him in the middle in a small territory. He might be a nice guy to have on the card. Explain to me with that boring fucking face of his, and that his body is there. It reflects light. You can see it, but there's nothing special about it. And then he's not even slovenly in a fucking interesting way. And, you know, hey, Ref Aubrey Ed's been letting her mane grow out. Did you see her do on this particular night? They've been feeding her fish oil because her mane has extra luster. I think daily brushing and grooming is key.
Her hair looked different, if that is what you mean.
So, do you have any comments on this match before I tell the people what happened in the finish?
No, I have no comments on this match. It wasn't,
okay.
You know, like you said, it just felt like one of these matches in the middle of the show where I'm like, okay, I can go to the kitchen now. But they started the show with it. And
hey, on these AEW pay-per-views, they got so many kitchen matches. No wonder the fans are mostly morbidly obese.
I'm not disagreeing with you. Not disagreeing with you at all about Garcia and his level of boredom-inducing whatever he does.
He reflects light.
But Christian's just as bad because he has a gimmick, he has a title, he has a stable, and I'm sick of him. He's boring from getting a chance to do his thing. You know, who's going to be the next person he picks on about a dead relative?
Well, I mean, he's boring because he's doing it with he's surrounded by people that are, you know, the epitome of amateur hour, and he's doing it with people that nobody gives a shit about, or that you can't make it interesting. He's throwing mud at a wall, it just sticks and drips. Nothing bounces back.
He's like a James Bond villain if it took place in Ontario.
He's like a real James Bond villain in an Austin Powers fucking movie.
Yeah, and I'm not interested anymore, so...
Well, after about 15 minutes of this nonsense, Dino was about to interfere, and suddenly Mac Daddy appeared, who apparently was supposed to be injured by these people on Collision. They said at the top of the match that's why he wasn't out in Garcia's corner. But he appears and attacks Dino, and they one of the more interesting fight-off, you know, type of thing I've seen.
Some of those shots he was laying in were interesting.
And then, and then Mom, Nick Plain's mom and Mac Daddy, Mommy and Daddy, got face to face, and she's a foot taller than he is. And she went to slap him, and he tried to block it, and he missed her hand, and she didn't want to really hit him, so she held up, and then he couldn't find her fucking hand. It looked like they were fighting over a fucking knife or something, trying to block that fucking, and then they finally, here came Dino again, and that's when they did the sloppy fight off where Dino's just bent over walking up the ramp, and old Mac Daddy is hitting him in the ribs with fake punches. And then, in the middle of the ring, Christian is going to go to hit fucking, what's his name? I've forgotten his name, like everybody.
Kill Switch.
Garcia. Garcia.
Oh, that one.
Christian goes to hit Garcia with a spear as he's charging, but he's bent over running, and all of a sudden he stops while he's bent over, but it looked like Garcia forgot to kick him and stop him. And then Garcia picks him up because he stopped in the middle of the ring, bent over in a dead run. And then boop, and Garcia just grabs him in a pile driver and gives him a pile driver, gets a 2 count. I had to take notes on it. I can't remember all this shit. I don't know how they remember this shit. I don't know what drugs makes them come up with this shit. Garcia jackknifed Christian, but Christian got the ropes, and then Mommy, jumped up and drew Aubrey Ed over to the other side so that Nick Plain could interfere, and then Christian hit his finish 1, 2, 3. Who's doing these fucking finishes? In the first match, all this fucking shit, people can't goddamn hit their fucking marks, and 17 minutes from bell to bell. Need I go on or should I move on?
I think the biggest reason to want AEW to leave Warner Brothers Discovery would be the possible disappearance of the TNT Championship. So we don't have to deal with this title anymore. No, and like I said, Garcia's a young wrestler. Well, let's see what happens as he fills out and gets older and a personality or whatever, other than, I dance for 3 seconds.
I think he needs to be electrocuted somehow to have a personality.
But I'm sick of Christian, and they're going to return to Christian versus Edge again. Do you want to see more of that? Is that what you want more of?
I've already forgotten what happened. What was the last word we left? Who was on top when last we left that angle? Did Christian get what fur, or was Edge still feeling wronged?
Well, I think Garcia was replacing Edge, who got hurt, or Adam Copeland, who got hurt by Christian and his people.
But is he hurt for real?
Oh, I have no idea.
Well, God damn it. Anyway, speaking of people that we used to enjoy that have rapidly started grating on our fucking nerves, Bryan Danielson was up next, challenging Eddie Kingston for the Continental Breakfast Championship. And I can't remember Danielson. When he was that smart aleck, fucking single a couple of years ago when they got put in a position where they needed a fucking heel, and there he was, and he's a smooth worker in the ring when he's working with normal fucking American-style workers. And he's gone to shit with the BBC and being around the plumber and that whole tomfoolery. He's always in garbage matches. And now, as we're getting the last year of his career before he hangs it up, instead of getting some great Bryan Danielson matches, we're getting great fucking tributes to Japanese legends that we don't give a shit about matches. And this, what Renee Moxley Good actually informed us that Kingston had dedicated this match to June Akiyama or June Cleaver, one or the other. So Kingston already, instead of, as we've mentioned, working a gimmick that would fit him and that unique look that he has, and play to his strengths as a fucking regular guy, fucking fighter, whatever. He's fantasizing. He's a goddamn member of the Gracie family, and Danielson is going to do nothing but do Japanese tribute matches with, it's like goddamn, it's karaoke. It's like somebody else did most of this shit good in Japan years ago, and now they're doing the shit that they used to do, but they're not doing, because that's not the shit they need to be doing. And Eddie Kingston has had 2 or 3 years now to even lose part of that stomach, hadn't he? And would you like me to go over some of the highlights?
Yeah, you can. I'll just say right here, I'm giving a lot of my comments early in the reviews. I just to get you to say what you have to say, but I've said it before, beyond Eddie Kingston. And I like Eddie. I want to root for Eddie. I want to like his matches. I love his promos. But Michael Hayes wanted to wrestle too, and Bill Watts is like, no, you know what? It's maybe better you just stay on the mic, and we'll get Buddy Roberts in here. There is no Buddy Roberts to slot in here. But Danielson I said it a while ago, I was starting to get sick of his matches when people were still raving about him. And he's a very talented guy, obviously. But whether it's the adopting the slowness of the WWE style to his style, or, you know, the stuff that's so overdone now that it makes you groan, the trading stuff back and forth. And, you know, I think there was also a time where the submission holds that were influenced by MMA were really strong and really powerful. But I don't feel like that's really there right now. And a lot of these...
Only in the minds of the competitors.
Yeah, so I'm a little sick of Bryan Danielson, too, and I have been for a while.
Well, and it's not we're sick of him. It's what he's doing with the talent that he has, and unfortunately, the talent he has to face in these things. But they start the leg kicks and the ducking chops and the leg checks. It looked like Ali and Inoki when they started out. And then more chops and kicks and the fake fast slaps. And I'm writing, can somebody grab a headlock, one tackle, drop down, hip toss? Give me a wrestling match here. And then finally, I think when Danielson gave Kingston a suplex off the apron to the floor, it was the first person to take a bump. They actually hadn't taken any bumps in the ring. They're just kicking and chopping. And then Kingston was trying to wrestle like Billy Robinson. I had to start fast forwarding because it was the same thing. And at 20 minutes in, they were standing there having a slap fight. And then Danielson went for the kick. Kingston hit a clothesline and power bombed him and pinned him 1, 2, 3. Just right. They had done a bunch of stuff and then decided that was all the stuff they had to do. And then they just fucking ended it.
It was weird. The hotter the crowd got into the match as the match went on, it built, the worse the work looked.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. They think they're in Japan and they're trying to educate an American audience and once again, doing it in karaoke style. You know, and that's why they've got what they've got. They got 15,000, 16,000 people there for Sting's last match, but what they've got in terms of television viewership in this overall country is because that's the only people that want to put up with this over and over again. And then as a result of the stipulation, Danielson was supposed to shake Kingston's hand, right? Like that was like it was the equivalent of the kiss my foot stipulation. Where if I'm going to beat you and you're going to have to kiss my foot. No, you got to shake my hand. Okay, well, he shakes his hand and then he raises Kingston's arm and bows to him. I don't.
See, in Blackpool, they teach you be the baddest motherfucker you can, but if you get your ass kicked, bow. Always pay respect to the man who beat you.
All righty. The next match was a very special why the fuck do this match with 8 people. Now, bear in mind, they've got a 3-way match for their World Heavyweight title later on in the program with their alleged main event talent. So to make sure that looks like shit, they put an 8-way with underneath and middle card guys and Chris Jericho on the undercard. For what?
Well, I remind you, this replaced what would have been Meat Madness.
Which was going to be from at least 6 fucking guys.
But Miro had a toenail issue.
Well, there was a fungus underneath you.
And Keith Lee's doing Keith Lee, you know?
I think Keith Lee has a breathing issue. As in every morning when he wakes up, he has to hold a mirror in front of his fucking face, see if he's still alive. Anyway, this was Hook versus Hobbs. Hobbs, poor Hobbs. Dad, poor dad. Mama's thrown you in the closet and we're feeling so sad. Versus Lance Archer. He's still there. And Jake walked to the ring to stand there and look at all this. Versus Brian Cage versus Wardlow versus Dante Martin, who was there so the big guys could throw him, versus Magnus, and this is neither Nick Aldis's previous fucking gimmick in TNA nor Mark Magnus before he became Muhammad Hassan. This is some fucking guy wearing a mask from Mexico. Versus Chris Jericho. All 8 in the ring at the same time. Do what you want to do. Go where you want to go. Be who you want to be. And it was a scramble match is what we are told. And that was a thing that the fucking indies came up with 15 or 20 years ago when they realized that even though they had 19 matches on their card because nobody really got paid, there was still 8 or 10 guys that would get their feelings hurt if they weren't booked so they could wrestle in front of 172 people. So they put them on the show in a scramble match where they can all go out and show how great they are, Brian. And it's the same thing here, only everybody's getting paid. And Tony apparently did not want to hurt anyone's feelings by not putting them on the, because why have this? Why? He thinks he's doing them a favor, putting them on pay-per-view in a match that will do nothing for anybody and is impossible to work and make sense.
It's a match for the fans, a match to guarantee some cheap pops and some oohs and ahs.
A match to make sure that the main event guys have that much less left to do that's going to get any kind of reaction, so they've got to dive through broken glass. So everybody did moves to everybody.
It wasn't broken when they dove through it. They broke it.
You caught me there. Good point there. I do stand corrected, sir, and I am ashamed of the error.
Thank you very much.
So you couldn't really tell whether anybody was a babyface or a heel here, but what difference would it fucking make? Because this was faker than a fucking football bat to begin with. And most of the guys spent the match sitting on the floor off camera waiting for their cues to come in.
There were pictures sent to us of that, actually, of Wardlow drinking water. Jericho hiding.
Wardlow wandered over to the fucking ringside and had a bottle of water while he was waiting for his cue, for his next scene. And then finally, the finish, imagine this. Wardlow powerbombed Dante Martin, 1, 2, 3. And this lasted 15 minutes of just nonsense over and over.
Couple things. What do you think of the reaction Jericho's getting?
I couldn't really tell he was getting that much of one.
He's not really getting one at all anymore right now.
Well, I mean, but to be fair, you could hide goddamn Stone Cold Steve Austin in this mess practically, and who would notice?
Congratulations to Magnus, by the way. Not having any of these visa issues. Maybe he could talk to his buddy Heckel and give him some advice.
Well, that's because he had a MasterCard a long time ago.
Wardlow, they seem to be going with some kind of renewed thing with him. They had the big fiery promo. Came out here with a big black eye and he won the match. The Undisputed Kingdom may be doing something a little more seriously now. Who knows? But what do you think of the?
You know, people. That is why that Buster Keaton won all those Oscars when he switched and became a dramatic actor after he'd been the funniest man in the movies.
He never won any Oscars.
Exactly. Because he never switched and became a dramatic actor because that face. The fuck, right?
You're saying they should change his name to Buster Wardlow?
Well, I'm saying they should have changed his name to Buster Hyman. That was a guy that we always loved in school, but no, you can't. Now, as we're going to talk about here coming up next with this next fiasco, they're actually trying to make, in some respect, the Undisputed Kingdom, a.k.a. the Devil's Henchmen, a.k.a. Adam Cole's group, or whatever the fuck this thing has been, after they spent the entire time telling us that Taven and Bennett and Roderick Strong were complete comedy jackoffs and beat them like drums, and they couldn't beat anybody. They never won anything, and all they were doing was screaming like lunatics and playing with stuffed animals. Now they're putting them over, and we're supposed to take them seriously. And what the fuck? And to break Wardlow out of that is long overdue. But sometimes he's with them and sometimes he isn't. But the point is, they can't get Wardlow over because the time has passed. The bloom is off the rose, and they missed their opportunity. He needs to go away. And he needs to go to another company if he's ever going to do anything. But the only thing that these people give a shit about is they want to see him power bomb somebody and beat him. His interview the other night, like he was a screaming fucking lunatic. There was a clip from Collision where he's just screaming at the top of his lungs. He's trying to talk everybody into that his time is now. No, your time is past. It's gone. It's in the archives. Vapor. History. It's not coming back. Look it up in the Funkin' Wagnalls. So this is a completely fruitless task that if he spends time on it, it's going to get old quick. Tony, I'm talking about. If he actually spends time now trying to make Roddy and Taven and Bennett and Wardlow. Many of those I like. I've never met Wardlow, and I think his ceiling is limited because he can't fucking talk, and he's probably an idiot. But the other guys I've liked in the past, but it's over. You've pigeonholed them, pal. You've told people they're fucking clowns. They ain't gonna buy them now. You've tainted your merchandise. The meat is spoiled.
When MJF returns, presuming he does one day,
somewhere over the rainbow,
do you put him back in a program with these guys?
Of course not.
Because he never got his revenge, obviously. They conspired together to get rid of him.
The whole reason why MJF should be out as long as possible is so people will have time to forget this ever happened. It was a goddamn fart in church. Nobody enjoyed it. And it's going to have no heat. Adam Cole is going to be so cold, he'll be frozen in an iceberg like the 1951 version of The Thing. No. MJF needs to stay out long enough that either his contract expires and he can go home to fucking Triple H, or until they forget all about what they did to him on the way out. And as again, Wardlow's done, and let's go ahead and advance to the next match here. The Dollar Store title was on the line with Roderick Strong against our little puppy Pockets. And Roddy had Taven and Bennett in his corner. And now Roddy's wearing a horror mask to the ring. Is he trying to usurp the devil's throne from Adam Cole while Adam's crippled? That's a horrible thing to do. And everybody, I think Roderick Strong's work is impeccable. And I think a lot of him. And I understand his drawbacks, his weaknesses are his size and his promos. And I've been saying that for 15 years, but his fucking physical conditioning and his work, and you can get a great match out of almost anybody with Roddy. We found out here different because it's an insult. And you can use him properly in an athletic, sports-oriented fucking environment to where he's credible. But screaming and Adam and all this fucking phony bullshit, they've already poisoned people on him here. And it's not going to work. Since he's been here, he's been presented as a complete dingleberry. And meanwhile, he's working against Pockets, who is a complete dingleberry and has been presented as the most unbeatable fucking guy in the company. He has won over every top wrestler on the roster. Pockets, they put him over Samoa Joe. And Joe's now the world fucking champion. So now you've got a match where the dingleberry, who's a great talent, but is presented as an idiot who can't win, beats the dingleberry who really is a dingleberry, who never loses. This is where they decide to beat this guy and take this fucking cheap-ass fucking phony belt off of him. So, I mean, normally I'd be saying ding dong, the witch is dead. At least they beat the fucking goof. The next step, hopefully, is the unemployment line. I know it's not. I'm wishful thinking. But goddamn, not only is it more insulting to the business when somebody makes this idiot look like something approaching a real wrestler, and he can do the moves, so can a trained chimpanzee. But and that would be a tribute to Roddy that he got anything out of him. But now you've spent all this time building this goof up to be unbeatable, and then you beat him with a guy that you've brought in and already fucking poisoned and ruined, and the fucking lowest guy on a totem pole. And he wins the thing. Help me understand what the fuck this decision was about.
What the decision to put him over Orange Cassidy was about, or the entire booking of Orange Cassidy? What are you asking?
The whole thing for this? Not even a brand new, when they brought old fucking Light Switch White in and wanted to push him as a big top heel. He didn't fucking beat this fucking clown. I don't remember, did Samoa Joe on his way to the title choke this fucking guy out and leave him in a garbage can? I don't remember it.
Well, he lost the TV title, his United Nations, whatever the fuck he has. He lost it briefly, and then he came back. Because remember when he lost it, they were building up, he's so tired, he's been defending it every week, he's broken down. And then when he came back, it's like the same thing. Going right back to that. I can't explain it. Tony Khan likes Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy has his fans. You could argue that he's one of those guys that makes the fans there happy, but doesn't help the company grow. They probably think he's one of the most marketable people they have, and they love him. And they think he's a great wrestling mind. And
well, and by the way, this great wrestling mind there, Pockets, the heel beat him clean with a backbreaker. Taven and Bennett didn't interfere. The heel beat the babyface clean after all this with a fucking backbreaker.
Well, that's the way Orange Cassidy would want it. Fair and square.
How do you get heat off of that?
No heat. Fair and square. Clean cut.
And then I'll just say one more thing, so that, because they had a surprise, Taven and Bennett and Roddy are celebrating in the ring, and suddenly Kyle O'Reilly gets in the ring, looking like he's been homeless for the past year and a half. Not injured, but homeless.
Why does everyone reappear on TV looking like that? Adam Cole, the same thing.
I mean, dirty sweatpants that look like he dug them out of a dumpster, and a fucking sweatshirt, and his hair all disheveled, and bags under his eyes, and he was making a mean face at Roddy behind his back, but then turned around and hugged him. And then everybody's happy to see him, and Bennett takes off his undisputed flatulent shirt, or whatever their fucking group name is, and gives it to, and now Bennett looks like he's a bald 50-year-old truck driver. Why are these guys, he used to be a good-looking man 10, 12 years ago. He looked like, I thought he was like fucking 27, 28. Now he looks 55, and he's got not a hair on his head.
I don't think he's 28 years old.
He used to be.
Well, he used to be, yes.
Well, I said 10 or 12 years ago, he's a good-looking man, full head of hair, like 20-something years old. Now he's goddamn it his AARP fucking card. And he gives the shirt to Kyle O'Reilly, and Kyle turns around and gives it to fucking Roddy, whispers in Roddy's ear, and walks off. If this is the best way they could think of to bring Kyle O'Reilly back, he jumps in the ring dressed like a goddamn hobo fresh off a freight train, turns down a free t-shirt that's cleaner than what he's wearing, whispers to somebody, and walks off.
It's not a clean t-shirt if someone else was wearing it.
It's cleaner than what he was wearing.
Well, the return of Kyle O'Reilly, I presume he's cleared medically, and
he didn't look like he'd been cleared mentally. Looked like they just talked him down off a bridge. Why does everybody come out looking like shit?
How come security lets them all just jump in the ring?
Well, because they say, look at that guy, he looks like shit. We ain't gonna fuck with him.
Stay away from that guy.
Yeah. Well, speaking of staying away from people, we now come to the part of the program that we always dread, where we are exposed to the airborne virus known as Plumber Moxley. This time, of course, he had his partner in climb, Claudio Clastignoli.
The climber.
The fuck, and social climber. And they were facing FTR
That's
in
the
a
problem.
tag team match.
See, that's the problem. Claudio looks like a mountain climber. He doesn't look like someone should be in a fucking wrestling ring. You have to keep telling everyone, he's the strongest man here. Really? He doesn't look it. He may be, but you have to keep convincing me for a reason. He should be a mountain climber.
Well, he used to just have single matches with quality opponents where he could show it. I was a fan of his work. Now he hangs around with this fucking empty-headed dipshit plumber from the south side of Cincinnati. He's from Newport. He needs to admit it. Moxley's from Newport, Kentucky. Fucking criminals.
Newport Light.
And FTR are in Greensboro. And in front of this many people, you would think that they would want to have the best possible match, that they would go over and above and beyond to have the best possible match. And guess what? It's not possible to have anything remotely resembling a best match if Moxley's involved. We have come to that conclusion. And I would feel sorry for them being wasted here on this big stage in their home state and blah, blah, blah. But what can you do anymore? And when Moxley and Claudio come out cosplaying as the Road Warriors with like kids' Halloween or potentially homemade Road Warrior spiked shoulder pads on. At that point, I predicted that FTR were going to lose and somebody was going to get choked out in a flat, decisive, and unexciting way. Little did I know that they were going to exceed even that pessimistic prognostication, Brian. I made notes, and I don't even want to go in this much detail now with this thing. The crowd reacts to strikes and bumps, but then they sit and watch like it's a fucking boring tennis match in between, because there's no heat on either team, because even the heels, Moxley and Claudio, are technically not heels. They've never tried to get heat. They try to show what badasses they are. They bury every babyface that they're in the ring with because of that. But at the same time, FTR, even the hometown favorites, they've been cooled off so much. Can you imagine the ovation they would have gotten from this crowd in that building a year and a half ago, when they still had something left of their reputation before they'd been completely choked out of them? People would have been going crazy. But now between these two, there's no rock and roll or Road Warriors like that. Just people are just going to go ballistic in a positive fashion for us. So you've got heels with no heat because they don't know how to be heels and they do the same shit all the time. And you've got the best tag team in the business in the ring that's colder than they've ever been. There's no title at stake, and we've already seen bad television interaction between these teams to promote this contest. So, and you know what? A cold match for no reason with no title at stake. FTR made that work with Robinson and Jay White, and they had the best match of modern times. But Moxley, the Moxley principle of him being involved in this, voids that possibility and makes it hopeless. And I start taking notes. Moxley takes Cash over the rail to fight in the front row. Long heat on Cash. Moxley gets to give the finger on camera and say shit several times where you can hear it. Simultaneous cold tags to Dax and Claudio. Dax makes a comeback, and Moxley rolls out so Dax can do a bunch of stuff to Claudio, while Moxley and Cash both kneel on the floor, watching intently on camera and waiting for their cue. Dax gets posted and gets color, and now they're beating Cash up again. So now one guy in FTR is getting his ass kicked, and the other one's bleeding like a sieve. Now they kick the shit out of FTR. And then Dax and the plumber stand in the middle of the ring, trading forearms at a snail's pace. Have you ever seen a snail's pace, Brian? Have you ever studied a snail while it went about its daily walk?
I've seen a snail move. I've never studied its pace.
It doesn't have a quick pace. Then FTR both Spike pile drove Moxley for a 2 count. He kicked out. Now they did a 4-way where they all stood there and traded forearms. Then they set up so many ducks and counters and switches and reverses with FTR again trying to be too complicated for their opponents to grasp. It looked like 4 drunks from a car wreck breaking into a square dance. And swing your partner to and fro, kick him in the balls and step on his toe. So then FTR hit their double team off the top rope and Moxley kicked out. FTR hit the shatter machine on Moxley and Claudio saved. And then they gave Cash a big move on the floor. Dax gave Dax gave Claudio a pile driver on the floor. Moxley gave Dax the shitty double arm DDT and got a 2 count. And then Dax rolled Moxley up and got a 2 count, and Moxley just rolled right over and got the choke on Dax. And Cash tried to make the save, and Claudio got the choke on him. So now there's Claudio with the choke on Cash and Moxley with the choke on Dax, and everybody is in the middle of the ring immobile for 10 seconds. And then the referee rang the bell. They choked both of them out at the same time. I swear to God, I've seen teams leaving the fucking territory with heat with the booker that didn't fucking get beat like this. Would you say, okay, we're going to get fucking color on one of them, and then we're going to get a long heat on both of them, and then we're going to beat the other one. That'd be bad enough. But when you, okay, we're going to color on one, long heat on both, and then we're going to choke both of them out at the same time. That's a fucking rib.
In your hometown.
In your home state. Yes. Pitching this finish in the locker room in any of the territories would have led to a fucking fight. That one side would have expected the other side to go for it. That side would have been offended. How fucking stupid do you think we are? I have seen people nose to nose over proposed finishes that were not this fucking preposterous, and they actually did this on purpose. They beat him bloody, survived every big move they had, beat him up for most of 20 minutes, and then choked both of them out in front of the referee, who did nothing about it but ring the bell, even though it's completely and totally illegal for both members of a team to have a choke hold, a submission hold, or any other fucking thing on both the members of the other team at the same fucking time. Jesus fucking Christ. Because this goddamn CTE-ridden, delusional, sunken-chested, buggy-whipped-armed, balding, fishy-white, fucking vegetable plumber thinks he's a goddamn vampire and a badass. All of us have to go through this nonsense. And nobody has the fucking balls to tell him, fuck you. Who the fuck do you think you are? You may cosplay Road Warrior Animal, but I think you're more like goddamn Cowboy Lang. Step back in your fucking place. Everything he does is phony. It looks like shit. It's a business he blades on camera. He's a potty mouth anytime he gets close to a microphone. He's determined to get him censored off of fucking television.
It's fitting that he won the Bruiser Brody Best Brawler Award because he wrestles like Brody. Brody was 6'6", 6'7",
yeah,
300 pounds. But that's how Moxley wrestles. He sells nothing. Even when he goes down, he hops back up or rolls right out. It's ridiculous. It's every match that he still has fans. Claudio's now doing this style. And why would anyone want to see FTR? It's not even just this match, this whole feud. They got their ass kicked how many times by these guys? And then they had a match to settle the score, and they got choked out in their hometown. Maybe they are finishing up. I don't think so, but I mean, that's the way they were treated.
I think maybe somebody needs to tell them something. They need to be getting the fucking picture, get the Iggy.
Moxley came out there dressed like a bootleg Road Warrior. At least Claudio, there's no shirt and he has some muscles. He looks like a very, very lean Road Warrior Hawk.
He looked like Rick Rude cosplaying as Hawk.
Yeah, that's actually a great example. Yes, minus the fro.
Yeah.
And then Moxley's out there wearing a t-shirt under it. And even with that, you're like, man. I never realized it. Not anyone could wear those shoulder pads. Not anyone could look good as a Road Warrior. It wasn't just the shoulder pads and the makeup. It was them and their size. Moxley, like you said, because we've seen him in AEW in better shape and tan, and he looks more like a badass then than now.
You're being charitable.
There's
still the matter of his shitty work.
His work's horrible. No, he's one of the worst wrestlers of modern times, which makes it infuriating that anyone likes him. Again, we always say it's a cult of personality around him. But his work is horrible. It looks bad, and it's all just about him doing what he wants. He's like a dirtbag Young Bucks. He's only going to do what he wants, and it's all going to be about making himself look as good as he wants.
So let me ask you this, and then we'll move on. If Moxley ceased to exist on the planet Earth tomorrow, would it affect AEW's business? Would the ratings change in any way? Would the house show ticket sales change in any way? Would anything change in any way besides we wouldn't have to watch him cutting his head with a razor blade on national television?
Let me put it a little differently than you laid out the question. If Jon Moxley decided to take his millions of dollars and his family and move to Aruba and stay in Aruba and get that tan back and enjoy his life, I don't think it would hurt AEW short-term or long-term. If anything, with a traditional booker, it would help AEW because it would force them to create some new people to get to that point of the elevated Jon Moxley push. But instead, he's going to still be there, and we're just going to get more of this. Every bad idea he has, from, hey, let's do Rocky 3, to, hey, let's create a Blackpool tribute group for the guy who's going to quit the company in a few months. Every idea is awful, and every idea is about just some faux badass fantasy that I'm sick of. And it even now makes me sick of the wrestlers I like FTR. I don't want to see FTR anymore. That was the worst way to kill off FTR in Greensboro. Those were the loudest FTR chants they've had in months and forever. We'll see what happens in the tag team division. Things are heating up, certainly.
Oh, we'll get there in a second. But here's a question. Can you scuba in Aruba?
Yes, you can scuba in Aruba.
Well, that's another reason, Moxley. Move to Aruba.
Well, if he wants to scuba, go to the Keys. I think the Key West would be better.
Well, wherever, but Moxley looks best floating in water because that's what he looks like, a fucking corpse floating down the River Thames.
Really? In England now? So somehow his body in the ocean got over...
Yeah, because he's the star of a Hitchcock movie.
All right.
All right, so then Deanna wrestled Toni Storm, and after the first 2 hours of this fucking pay-per-view, not spending my time on this. I assume Toni won. I saw the screen went to black and white and fast forward.
Toni won. Mariah May was dressed like Toni Storm was a few years ago. And the AEW Women's Division continues to be a leader in sports entertainment.
Well, speaking of leading people into sports entertainment, we were led to believe in the next match by Don Fallis, the leader of the Fallis family, that it was going to be the greatest match of the decade between Will Ostrich, and I'm back to calling him Take a Shit now. Boy, howdy, did they all take a shit right in the middle of the ring with it. So there was no reason for this match to happen. It was blurted out by Don Fallis himself that, we can't find any competition, so members of my family are going to face each other with the thought of having the greatest match of the decade, which of course makes absolutely no sense why he would want this to happen, because why would the evil manager care about having the greatest match of anything or a good match or whatever when his guys would be fighting? It would create dissension and ill will in his group. He wouldn't want that because one of his guys has to lose. So this made no sense. And Brian, you and I, looking deeper, analyzed this as well. They fucked up. They realized that they signed Ostrich and put him in the heel group 3 months ago, and then let him come back and finish, or go back and finish his New Japan commitments, and then come back. And now they realize they got no baby faces worth of shit. The people are cheering their heels and booing the baby faces out of the building. So they're going to switch this. They're going to make Ostrich a baby face. And that's why he came out the other night slapping hands and shaking hands and smiling at the fans and giving the rah-rah speech and everybody cheering him, being happy. But then Take a Shit was glaring at him, and you could smell something was going to happen. Okay, so Ostrich is going to win. The heel group is going to turn on him, and now everybody's in the right place. Except that's not what they fucking did. What they did was nothing. They had a match, and it was over. And nobody did shit. And I assume that it was our boy Willie that was calling this thing, because between him and Take, he's the veteran, and he's the new big glorious signee that's going to be a game changer. So I'm assuming he's calling this thing. He's been in Japan too long. They start out and they start wrestling, and the fans start doing the fucking ole, 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 ole soccer chant deal for him because he's from England. Did you see what they did?
What did they do?
They kept right on doing their chain wrestling. He didn't stop. He didn't fucking milk them. He didn't work with. He didn't let the people have their fucking thing. They're enjoying doing the ole, 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 which had nothing to do with the goddamn dry-ass chain wrestling. It was so dry you had to watch it in the rain that was going on at the same time. Two different things were happening. And he can't listen to people, because you don't listen to people in Japan. Because it doesn't make any sense if you do. That's why all these guys are fucking poisoned. Both these guys are athletic. They're in shape. They can move. They do all the same things that everybody else on this roster do, but they usually execute them either quicker, sharper, or better. But there is no breakout superstar here. Take has plenty of potential, as we've talked about, and he needs to be trained and guided and produced and brought along. He's not like gonna fucking just instantly break out like he is right now. Neither is Ostrich, because he doing more of the same shit that everybody else on the show has already done for the past 5 years, just a little better. This is not a Braun Breaker situation where by force of personality, a motherfucker's going to smash himself into the main events. They stood in the middle of the ring and traded chops and forearms. And then at one point, Take gave Will a superplex and got a 2 count, and then grabbed a chin lock on him. I'm glad he still kept working the same body part that is affected by the superplex off the top rope. You see what I'm saying? Just doing shit. And Take a Shit's the heel, but he's not cheating, and he doesn't have heat. And Ostrich is the babyface, but he's in the heel group. And the heel manager is on color, putting them both over. And still can't explain why he wanted this to happen. And that's why I wrote this. As this plods along, I fail to see how this match is noticeably different from any other AEW match, except these guys are in better shape. And they did several big moves in a row. They didn't sell and popped right up from them. Then they got on their knees and traded forearms. Then they got on their feet and traded forearms. Can they watch tape from the 80s to learn how to work? Oh, wait a minute. There's more. Take acted like he was knocked out by a forearm and the referee was checking him. And so after Ostrich has knocked him out with the forearm and the referee's checking him, and Will goes over and doesn't cover him, he pulls him up by the hair and gives him taunting kicks in the corner. And he's the babyface. Then they do a brief gymnastics routine followed by false finishes. Then Take gave Ostrich some kind of suplex in the corner and almost broke his neck, dropped him straight down.
That was brutal. Not just his neck, but he even showed the mark at the media scrum afterwards, his back.
Yes.
Oh my God. For a guy that has injury issues or, wrestles this style, that's brutal.
Well, the thing is, those ropes will rip all the skin off of you. He dropped him straight down. And then at one point, Take hit a couple of really nice moves that looked good. Don't know what, what they call them. But Ostrich popped right up without even registering it and leveled Take a Shit and covered him, and then Take a Shit kicked out at one. And this is all the shit that makes modern wrestling interchangeable and unwatchable, because it's just this constantly. And yes, the AEW fans, they just love that stuff. And that's why that it damages the business and it's constricting, because we've all seen all this so much that there's fewer and fewer people that will stick with it to see more of it. And then, by the way, Ostrich hits the Styles Clash, and Sockface called it that.
What's he supposed to call it?
Supposed to call it a what a maneuver rather than remind everybody of a big star on another fucking show. And then Ostrich did the double arm deal and dropped Take right on his head. It looked like it broke his neck, but he didn't cover him. Even though he's laying there motionless, he pulled off his elbow pad, came from behind while Take was on his knees, and Ostrich slapped his leg with his left hand while swinging his right arm over the top of Take a Shit's head. And there was no way for Take a Shit to take a bump. He just had to collapse, and he covered him 1, 2, 3. So out of all these goddamn big moves in this match, the shittiest looking thing is the finish. And then, as I mentioned, nothing happened. Don gets in the ring to check on Take a Shit. Here comes Kyle Felcher, the other juvenile delinquent involved in this group. He comes down to the ring, and you think, okay, well, here's going to be the deal. Now they're all going to turn on Ostrich. Ostrich and Take a Shit bowed to each other. Don left the ring, and the announcer said, well, Wednesday night on Dynamite on TV, it's going to be Will Ostrich versus Kyle Felcher. And Ostrich and Felcher then give each other a big hug and walk out together holding hands up the ramp. What the fuck is this?
Well, there it is. That was a hell of a match. Now, I will say a lot of people are saying it was match of the year, obviously.
What? Wait, hold on. What in the... Brian, match of the... Even if you like the fucking twinkle toes style of wrestling that these people have adopted, this wasn't even the best of that. Was this the best of something that you have seen this year, no matter what that particular subject may be?
It wasn't my match of the year. I didn't hate it, but I also kind of knew what to expect. They weren't going to all of a sudden work a different style. I didn't expect it was just a weird dynamic too, like you said, the heel manager on commentary putting both of these guys over. But...
Well, that's what they told no story. There is no story to tell. There is no reason for this. There's no...
That's not AEW's strong suit, storytelling. It's more about in-ring, do what you can, balls to the wall.
So people are calling this a potential match of the year.
There are people who are raving about this match, saying match of the year, one of the great matches. There are people calling this the greatest pay-per-view of all time, apparently. Again, not what I think, but I've seen people doing it. It's stunning.
Okay, well, you know what? If I'd only been born 40 years later, I could have gotten the wrestling business. Instead of being a manager, I could have been the goddamn biggest wrestling star in the world because it's so easy now. And they don't care whether you fucking look like anything or not. And you can, goddamn, when I got into business, I was almost 200 pounds. I'd be Andre the Giant now. The fuck? It's this easy? All right, Brian. Well, we're getting down to nut cutting time, as JR would say, and that's apropos because they brought JR out to do color for the double main event, the world title match and the world tag team title match. And you know, I don't know why they wait until people have seen every possible thing in the world before they trot JR out. Otherwise, and if he'd been out there this whole time, he would have already either gone to sleep or been so impatient he would have been openly knocking everything.
You know what? This was the most energy I think we've heard from him in a very long time.
Well, it was a big night, big moment. He was, I'm sure, trying to get up for it with all of his health issues he's had and everything. But God, I wish he had something better to work with. Here you've got the artiste who paints in voice, and he's got a canvas of fucking mud. Anyway, the world title match, the three-way, triple threat, whatever, Hangnail Page, Swerve Strickland, and Samoa Joe. Instead of getting Joe and Swerve, Hangnail had to worm his way into this thing and spoil it, and now I don't particularly care about seeing Joe and Swerve as much because we've already seen them a lot in this because there was a lot of everybody in this because this again went easily 20 minutes fucking bell to bell or more. And they just had, again, they had an 8-way as a preliminary match when they knew they had a 3-way for their world title match. And I don't care if you like the matches or not. You can sit there as a fan and like the matches. But as a professional, I'm offended with the way that he puts his shows together. I'm offended not only as a former booker, but I'm offended as a former talent for the current talent that has to suffer the way Tony fucking books in his goddamn deranged mind. So it's disrespectful. Anyway, I know you're going to find this hard to believe, Brian, but it was 3 guys taking turns doing moves to each other. And they would double power bomb Joe, and then they'd start punching each other without selling it. Or Page was punching Swerve, and Swerve was laughing at him while he was doing it. And then Swerve knocks Joe out with a kick, but doesn't cover him. He stands there and waits for 25 seconds and then kicks Page in the head and covers him and gets a 2 count. And then Page disappears and Joe and Swerve fight. And at one point, did you see where he knocked Joe down with some kind of move and Joe is selling. And he sits there for 15 seconds in one place staring at Swerve climbing the ropes, standing on the top, and coming off and giving him a double stomp. He was sitting there looking at the man, sitting in the position to be stomped forever. And then
he couldn't believe what he was seeing. So he froze.
I wish I could say I was frozen. I was vibrating. And then when Swerve covers Joe, he gets a 2 count, and Page is supposed to pull the referee out, but he's late, so Joe has to kick out anyway. Then Page pulls the referee to the floor, and the referee is going to sell being pulled to the floor for the next 5 minutes. There are people been in serious car accidents that have been able to at least get up and climb up the fucking hill, but the referee sells forever. Then Page gets the belt. And he hits Swerve in the head with it. And he stands there for 15 seconds, and then he hits him again. And then he goes out to the apron and yells at Swerve. And then he puts the belt down on the apron because he's finished using it. The match isn't over, but he He doesn't figure he'll need it anymore. While this is going on, Joe has stood up and started staggering because he knows he's supposed to get buckshot lariated. But apparently he didn't know that Page was not only going to hit Swerve once with the belt, he's going to go over and hit him again. Then he's going to go out on the apron and fucking yell at him. Then he's going to turn around and get set for the buckshot. And Joe has been having to stagger this whole time. And Page goes for the buckshot and he hits it. He hits it. Joe just stands there and lets him hit it. And then another one. And then he covers, but Tony Schiavone, who, by the way, we've established is a year or two older than me. He's a 60-something-year-old white man who then screams, "There's no referee, dude." Brian, if I ever said the word dude while I was doing commentary on a major television wrestling promotion, I would want to be shot in the back parking lot like Old Yeller.
I wish someone would shoot Schiavone and Excalibur to the moon. They killed every broadcast they kill. They have the best time laughing at things when it's serious. And then when it's serious, you can't take them serious. Schiavone just yells out compliments. And Excalibur's one of the all-time worst.
Well, fortunately, a new referee came in about then. The old one had only been down for about 3 or 4 minutes. And the cover, but the 2 count because Joe kicked out. So then Joe ducks the third buckshot and gets a choke, but Swerve breaks it up. Well, then Nana gives Swerve the crown, and Swerve's going to use it, but then he thinks better of it and throws it back, and Joe gets a choke on Swerve. And Swerve rolls him up for a 2 count, but Page jumps off, or jumps in, rather, and instead of making the save, he jumps on the second referee and beats him up, just over and over, boom, 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 and throws him to the floor. So then everybody lariats everybody, and Swerve dropped Page on his head, and Joe suplexed Swerve and got the choke on Page, and the original referee, who is finally conscious, comes in and Joe's got the choke on Page, and Page taps out. Another 20 unending minutes. And is Tony insisting on these finishes, or do these guys think that they're good? In some, because Joe knows better than this overbooked horse shit. That's what happened. So we beat the guy that shouldn't have been in the match to begin with and nobody wanted to see. So now I guess he thinks, well, we can still have Joe and Swerve, but in the meantime, we've seen plenty of Joe and Swerve now. The mystery is over there. What'd you think?
I kind of agree with what you said. I'm not a big fan of these 3-way matches. Wasn't a big fan of this one. I wasn't a big fan of this feud and this build-up. At least Adam Page now is clearly a heel to anyone who was doubting it. Swerve is clearly a babyface, as he's been. And I guess
the manager.
And I guess this all continues, or at least their hatred of each other continues, and Joe gets a new challenger, maybe Wardlow or someone else.
Wow.
Yeah. But we still have the main event.
We certainly do. And isn't that sad? Who is going to challenge for the world title that we would give a shit about at this point? Well, they got bigger problems over in the tag team division, Brian, because there's big things on the horizon after this main event match of the pay-per-view, Sting's retirement. That's why they sold the tickets. That's why the crowd was there. That was the interest of the pay-per-view. The rest of this stuff has just been biding time. As I said a little while ago, they had one job. One job. Just give Sting a nice fucking send-off, right? Well, we shall see. The opening legend to enter was Ric Flair in Greensboro at the Coliseum. And down the aisle he comes, and he gets a nice ovation. I'm sure you heard it. Very, very nice. And then The second one to come out is Ricky Steamboat, and he got a bigger pop than Flair. Is it just that?
No one's sick of him.
Well, I was about to say they've seen Flair so much on TV, even if it wasn't live, whereas Steamboat has the goddamn good common sense that God gave a goose, as Mama Cornette used to say, to stay out of sight most of the time and rest on his laurels as a retired legend.
Steamboat never embarrasses you if you're a fan of his.
No. And of all the people involved in this, he's the only one that I felt bad and embarrassed for, because the other ones brought it on themselves. But I can't imagine what he's thinking when he sees this, and just shaking his head. Anyway, Nikita Koloff, Magnum TA, and Scotty Riggs were in the front row. One of these things is not like the other. They couldn't even introduce them, and they were in the front row looking on.
Reportedly, WWE turned down Kevin Nash's request, or at least when he asked if he could go, they said they would prefer if he didn't because he's under a Legends deal, and Sting wanted him to be there.
Well, yeah, but would he have then been in the front row where they could do the parade wave for a brief on camera, or what the fuck? Nikita Koloff
next to Scotty Riggs, yeah.
Well, but Nikita and Scotty Riggs should have been in the front row. I mean, all do love and respect Scotty Riggs, but what does he have to do with this? Magnum and Nikita were two of not only the biggest stars to ever wrestle in the Greensboro Coliseum, but Nikita and Sting had some interaction. And anyway, they spent plenty of time on the Buckaroos entrance. Here come the Lollipop Guild. They had glorious music. They were wearing satin robes. Their hair was dyed black. They looked like two children cosplaying as Gomez Adams. And they had cannons to shoot off their business cards. So the robes were reminiscent of, in the days when Rocky was a hot movie, you might see some kids wearing these robes or whatever, but now they fancy themselves boxers, or was this just to get heat for looking as big a douchebags as possible? They've already got that trademarked.
Yeah.
So then, here came Darby. And he gets his entrance and his introduction, and then blackout. And piano music starts playing, and it wasn't Billy Joel. The longer it went, the more I believe that somebody's friend or cousin is taking piano lessons in the company.
It wasn't me.
What the fuck was that?
It wasn't me.
No, your shit sounds better.
Thank you.
Exactly. So then they went to the dramatic video where Sting is in a theater and he's watching on the screen, and they open you could tell Darby had to shoot this because, yeah, there's a germ of things there, but the curtain opens and he looks at his career on the screen. They had pictures of him when he was in WCW because they don't own the footage. And then some highlights of him in Japan and stuff that he's done recently. And I just made the note, this looks so amateur hour for something of this magnitude or alleged magnitude. And the WWE would have made magic here with some kind of production, right? But this is, one of the guys that went to film school shooting it on his off day.
I didn't think this was that bad. I thought this was all right.
Oh, it was better than what you normally see on AEW television, but for something that they need, if they're going to have a national television show, they need real fucking production. Again, can you imagine what this would have looked like on Fox on SmackDown or on any of their premium live events? They would have sent a crew and a few trucks, and they would have shot for a few days, and they would have come up with something that they could have nominated for an Emmy. And Sting says, it's showtime for the last time. Let's do this. And they go back to the arena. And they play the music again. But now it's Seek and Destroy, right? And out comes Sting dressed as Surfer Sting with the red, white, and blue, the Great American Bash 90 type of look, the blonde hair. And there was a germ of something here, but they fucked it up. Because it's Sting's sons dressed up as him, Surfer Sting and then Crow Sting at two different phases of his career. When he came out, it looked like, because they had the long shot, it could have been Sting. It could have been Sting dressed up in his old, and the people popped, right? But then they go to a close-up with one of the handheld cameras, and you can tell it's not Sting. And then the Crow Sting walks in. Well, now you know that the other one ain't Sting, and so that one probably ain't either. They botched their opportunity. If they'd have kept the long shot, then people would have thought that Sting, when Crow Sting walked out, the whole shit. Are they doing a split screen? And then when real Sting walks in between them, then they would have gotten that visual pop of the people couldn't tell that they were fake Stings. Obviously, one of them had to be, but then they could have said, oh, it's Sting's sons. But instead, they took a close-up of the first fucking guy out, and you could tell he had a fat face. They had the opportunity to do a little production sleight of hand, and they dropped the ball on it. Am I being too critical here?
I mean, you're being critical. Was it perfect? Probably not, but it was a nice thing. And, you know, I will say I started laughing maybe for the wrong reasons when this was going on, because, again, it's a nice tribute, but where else would someone retire and their children in their 30s would show up dressed like they used to dress and then just start doing their moves? I mean, it's ridiculous on its face.
Well, we ain't got there yet. And you told me beforehand, you watched it before I did. You said you enjoyed the ridiculousness of the spectacle that it was, or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, well, let's get there then. It's, by the way, Sting's AEW record 28-0. He never put anybody over.
Selfish Sting. Old selfish Sting.
Well, but no, he was never asked.
I know.
But goddamn, that's the thing. Of course, he shouldn't lose his retirement match, but all that money you've invested, they never set one guy up to get a young guy on the way up to get the rub of beating MJF when he was a heel. Nothing. Anyway.
No, in fact, there was a promo once where Sting kind of punked out MJF, and I was like, oh, wow, they may do something with these two, and then they never did anything with those two. But I guess Tony, when he started AEW, was just obsessed with the idea of getting a WCW legend and giving them a long undefeated streak.
Tony's affection and affinity for Nitro and all things late 90s WCW, which is why the biggest example of rotten booking ever, late 90s WCW, that led to the fucking crash of the most well-funded wrestling company to that point in time of all time, is what he wants to emulate. So he's doing good there. So at the bell to ring to start the match, Darby hit a dive on both of the Buckaroos on the floor. And then Stinger started hitting Stinger splashes. And then his sons jumped in the ring. And they did Stinger stumbles. They did back and forth. They were doing Stinger splashes to the fucking little Buckaroos in the corner. And just constantly. And by the way, this is a tornado match with no rules and no disqualification and no count out and a lazy booking. And you got a 65-year-old legend that you're trying to give a great match to on the way out. So there's always going to be smoke and mirrors, but the smoke is not usually from shit really on fire, and the mirrors usually don't have real glass in them that people are thrown through. Sting got the Scorpion on both Bucks at the same time and then beat both of them up on the floor with chairs while his sons were setting up tables. And Darby was putting a 12-foot ladder up, at least 12 feet, maybe 15. And then everything came to a complete halt while Sting and one of his sons and they all started pulling out panes of glass from under the ring. And then suddenly it looked like it was a goddamn window replacement job where everybody's carefully carrying panes of glass to different places to set them up where they're supposed to be while nothing else is fucking happening. And they've got one pane of glass leaned up against the ring, and they've got on the other side of the ring 3 chairs lined up on one side and 3 chairs lined up on the other side, and they put the pane of glass in the middle of that. And then Sting's got his baseball bat, and they do a spot where he swings at one of the buckaroos and he moves and Sting hits the metal stairs real hard for the sound, right? But then he turns around and the other one's behind him and he swings at the other buckaroo and that one ducks and he hits the glass with the bat, but it doesn't break. So he draws back and just hits it again and breaks it on purpose. And we'll talk about the glass and see if we can figure out what the fuck with it here in a few minutes. But at that point, they walk fought all through the arena to go back to the stage so that all 4 of them were on the stage. And Nikki suplexed Darby off the stage through 2 tables set up with black cloth over the top of them. But then Maddie suplexed Sting off the stage on the other side through 2 tables covered up in black cloth. And then Darby and the Buckaroos go back to the ring and they buckle bomb Darby on a ladder in the corner. But moments later, he's up making a comeback, beating up both of them. And I wrote, this is a complete fucking farce of this. This is a parody. So then Darby set up the ladder and in the middle of the ring and went to almost the top of it, and just as Nikki, for no apparent reason, is just staggering in front of the chairs with the pane of glass, Darby does a cannonball off the top, and the other dipshit brother pulls one brother out of the way, and Darby goes back first off a 15-foot ladder in a ring, through the glass, through the chairs, and to the concrete floor. And everything explodes everywhere. And they also, at some point, there was another pane of, they throw him and through glass later on, Sting, that was leaned up in the ring in the corner. So when he went ass first through it, it shot glass everywhere in the crowd. Now, here's 2 things. Was it real glass or was it fake glass? Well, to be honest, I don't know. Because these people are stupid enough to use the real shit, but it cut Darby Allin's back open everywhere. He was punctured and sliced and whatever the fuck. But besides that, it blew into 1,000,000 pieces. So whether it was fake glass or real glass, if you get that in your eye, if somebody opened their mouth at the right time and went down their fucking throat, or some kid, it lands in their drink and they drink and, oh, I'm choking, mommy. The carotid is sliced from the inside out. What the fuck? And whether it was fake glass or not, it was a real bump off a 15-foot ladder through shit onto chairs on the concrete. And here's why I'm finished with Darby Allin. Because unlike most of these guys that AEW has jerked off the indies, he's got some talent and some charisma. He has an appeal. And as we've mentioned before, years ago, before, we found that it wasn't going to take place, if you produced him and you brought him along, he could be a dynamic underdog babyface that fucking sells and blah, blah, blah. But they've made it so preposterous that nothing can stop him. And the littlest guy just comes back from everything. And then we've gotten to know that as a person, as a human being, Darby Allin is the biggest fucking moron that has ever stepped foot on this earth and drawn a breath. He's a goddamn mental case, and he ought to be put away somewhere for his own safety and those of others. He is not producible because he's a complete idiot. Even if you tell him don't do this shit. You make the business look like shit. You make it phony as fuck. And you're going to kill yourself. And we're going to lose our investment in you because you ain't going to be worth a shit. All those many reasons. He just wants to do this shit because he doesn't care whether he hurts himself or not, which is the classic textbook definition of a fucking moron. So I cannot continue to support a guy that has some talent and some charisma that refuses to use it and refuses to set any kind of example and refuses how to do this the right way or to learn how to do this the right way. And now, after he's goddamn done this, he's going to come back and finish the match, by the way. And then he got sewed up, and he's put out on the internet that this shouldn't interfere with him leaving next month to go climb Mount Everest. I hope you do go climb Mount Everest, you fucking brainless twat. Stay as far away from me as possible so I don't have to keep telling you what a fucking idiot you are. And what a golden opportunity that you're wasting, that some fucking Mark billionaire will pay you guaranteed money to go out there and jack off like a fucking moron. Like your goddamn Danny Knoxville or whatever the jackass guy's name is. You just want to get hit in the nuts over and over. Fuck you and your fucking nuts, Darby. It's worse to waste talent and opportunity when you have it than not to ever have it to begin with. So do you think, Brian, I've registered my complete disgust with Darby Allin as a human being for wasting goddamn things that he gets that almost nobody else ever gets in their life?
Yeah, he's really good. I like him. I think he should just do what he does.
Yeah, so then Sting came back and he beat up a bunch of them. And then he climbed the ladder. But one of the Bucks caught him and they powerbombed him through a table, but he didn't sell it. He just stood up and made a comeback. But then they threw him through the glass and gave him the scorpion death drop and got a 2 count. And then one of the Bucks tried to grab the belt from Steamboat, but Steamboat chopped him, so the other one hit him with a chair, and Ricky actually sold something. And then Flair rolled into the ring and covered Sting up so that the Buckaroos couldn't beat him up anymore with the belt. And this took forever. And then they finally decided to double super kick Flair and then Steamboat. There's more. The Buckaroos hit Sting with the belt and got a 2 count. They did another double super kick to him, but he didn't sell it and he made a comeback on him. Then they gave him the double knee lift and he kicked out of that. Then they gave him another double knee lift and he kicked out at 1. Then they gave him a double super kick. And then they tried to give him the big double team. It used to be the Meltzer driver, but now they've renamed it the Tony Khan driver. And they were going to go for that, but Darby pushed whichever one.
I thought that was Jimmy Jacobs, the Tony Khan driver.
No. That's only in automotive terms. This was actually a wrestling move. But Darby came back from the dead and pushed whichever Buck was on the top rope off through a table. And then Sting hit the death drop on the other one and got a 2 count. Jesus Christ. And then Darby, who's still covered in blood and his back is bleeding everywhere, and this nitwit, I wouldn't have got anywhere near him. He goes up the top rope and hits the coffin drop where he drops his bloody mess of a back on one of the Buckaroos. So there's hepatitis for the future. Hey, Darby was homeless. Don't all homeless people have hepatitis? Or is that something else that the homeless people will get mad at us for throwing around?
Yeah, they'll get mad at you because I'm not saying it, and of course that's not true.
Well, of course it's not. But I bet Darby does. And finally, Sting got the Scorpion on whichever one of the Buckaroos was in the ring at the time, and finally it was over. And Sting and Darby Allin retained the tag team title, and you'll never guess, Brian, we never could have seen this coming in a million years. The tag team title has been declared vacant and will be filled in a tournament on TV in March. So, Darby Allin enrages me. Darby Allin makes a fire burn within my fucking bowels at the ignorance of him. And I'm almost moved to travel and leave and go out in public and leave my home and travel somewhere just to tell him what a stupid idiot I think he is. But I'd probably end up getting COVID on the way. So.
I'll beat you with a skateboard.
Oh, yeah, fuck his skateboard. I would shove his skateboard up his fucking ass. Because I'm sorry, but, you know, he's 145 pounds, and I know nothing can kill him, but also he really can't do anything effective except getting beat up. We didn't really see him do anything except fling himself around and damage himself. It's not like he actually has holds and moves that he hurts people with. He just makes them tired out trying to kill him. Anyway, I will make another comparison. This match, the way Sting went out. Sting got over as a major star in the wrestling business, working for the second largest promotion in the country. Did Sting get over by doing any of this shit? Any of it?
No, that's the thing. Since Sting has come back, and again, he's an older guy, and I guess they had to hide a lot of what he couldn't do through these matches, but these are kind of the matches we saw him work here and nowhere before here.
Ever. You never said, oh, Sting had that fucking bloodbath, or Sting.
Well, I mean, there were a few wild matches, him and Abdul, him and Cactus blood. Jack, yeah.
Yes, I'm saying you always have matches with blood, but there weren't any bloodbaths, like Sting was noted for having bloodbaths, or Sting was noted for street fights, or Sting was noted for fucking taking high bumps off of fucking ladders through furniture. Is there an example of Sting going through a table before he joined AEW? Maybe in TNA? With the Dudleys around, probably. But the point is, Flair made Sting a star in the same building 35 years ago in a 45-minute match that was twice as long as this one and seemed like it was a third of as long, and they didn't even use a chair, did they?
No.
No.
Eddie Haskell was sitting in the chair.
Yes, and one of the penthouse pets. I'm sure somebody was sniffing that chair later on.
Jason Hervey.
But yes, you do have to have smoke and mirrors when you've got a 65-year-old legend that you're trying to protect and make look good in a match. That's why you have great workers that can take bumps for him and put him in position for things and do everything for him, not when you resort to furniture and glass and fucking chaos of this and phoniness of this magnitude. Then you've killed everything, including something could have gone wrong and he could have fucking broke his neck with all this shit. And it's not like either one of the buckaroos are strong enough to move a grown man around and save him if his trajectory is off. So, again, before we get into the post-match, they have this match to honor and close the career of a guy who got over by doing everything except anything that happened in this fucking match. So then, he's got the opportunity now to thank everybody, right? There's chanting, thank you, and they played the music and let Celebration go long enough for Sting to get some breath. And Darby, once again, is still out there. He's sliced to ribbons and taped up everywhere, but Sting starts his speech, and he starts with thanking the fans in Greensboro. You've always been here since the start to blah, 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 in this same building and everything. And then he's starting to move on to the people that have supported him around the world, and just then Darby leans over and whispers in his ear. And Sting actually says on the microphone, Darby's giving me cues. And then the copyright notice pops up and they go to black. They ran overtime on the pay-per-view. They cut Sting's retirement speech off the pay-per-view. We didn't say, did he hug Ric Flair? We don't know. Is Flair still breathing? We don't know. Where's Steamboat? What happened to him? What did Sting have to say? How did he end it with farewell? Did he say it's showtime for the last time? We don't know what he said because it wasn't on the air. You had to be in the building to see it. It was like one of Dick the Bruiser's old TV shows. They'd get you hooked and then say, well, folks, should have been here live. We're out of time.
That is the ultimate AEW goodbye, isn't it? They go off the air because they run over during your retirement speech.
If it had been the WWE, we would have seen the fucking pyro go off and everybody standing and applauding as the triumphant hero went up, and then we'd have seen the highlight video of everything that happened in the match and the fucking fade out on his face with the fans chanting, we've still got it, or whatever, thank you, Sting. Instead, we got copyright 2024 AEW Wrestling and black.
And this time you can't blame fans for not setting their DVR.
Shut it down. That's what are you going to do? Buy the pay-per-view after the pay-per-view? Here, let me just, I'll get a $50 insurance policy. Let me get the best of fucking stand-up from fucking Josephus, just in case the real pay-per-view that I bought runs over.
Well, that was AEW Revolution. Tony Khan tweeted this out this morning, Jim. Last night at AEW Revolution, Sting completed the greatest comeback in sports history. Sting's 3-year run in AEW, from ages 61 to 64, 30 matches, 30-0 record. 29-0 in AEW, 1-0 in Noah for the Great Muta send-off, retired as AEW World Tag Team Champion in the best last match ever.
Oh my God. Oh boy.
Well, let's, on that note, Jim, before we get out of here, because we've been going a while, a little bit of audio, just a little bit from Tony Khan's media scrum. Nothing wacky, but I thought
you said it was from Tony Khan's media scrum. How can it not be wacky?
Well, he couldn't get too crazy. He kept saying he had an 8 a.m. meeting in, I think, West Palm Beach for the NFL. So this is a rather subdued Tony Khan in Greensboro. Let's go to some audio here.
All right, listen, while we have some time, let's talk Sting. Let's talk about you as a fan. We know Tony Khan is...
That's Renee Moxley Good. She's now hosting the media scrum the way they have Byron Saxton hosting it in WWE. And she's dressed like one of the Rockers. She's wearing more ridiculous stuff each and every week.
I think, you know what? One of her best friends fancies themselves a designer, I bet you.
She thinks like, this is my chance. This guy will let anyone do anything. I've always wanted to be a star or at least dress like one. Now I can do it. But let's go back to her question.
A huge wrestling fan. That's why we're here. That's why we have AEW. But for you to be able to be a part of Sting's final match, what did that mean for you? We got to see you out in the ring with him, but talk to me about some of that.
Well, it was...
No, we didn't get to see it.
I wish we would have seen that. How come that was cut off? Did they make everyone sign an NDA? Let's go back to this.
Most exciting and the best night I've ever had in wrestling, Renee. I grew up as a huge Sting fan, and to be here tonight in the Greensboro Coliseum, I felt like it was the right place at the right time. When I talked to Sting about when he wanted to go out and how he wanted to go out, it felt like this was the right time, the right place, and I feel like we have just done everything perfectly. It was a perfect night, and top to bottom, I thought it was AEW's best show. The build and the way we got to the pay-per-view, I thought it was the best show we've ever done. And top to bottom, it was a perfect night, and you couldn't have asked for anything better, which is perfect because we were
perfect.
He's used perfect 4 times.
We didn't even see the goddamn speech. How can that be perfect? We did everything perfect except show the pay-per-view buyers what they paid to see. What?
Wanted to give Sting a perfect send-off, and I think we did that. He's such a great person, and he's had this amazing career. And to think back years ago, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, who would have ever thought this was going to be possible where we got tonight? I mean, you know, I certainly, in 2020, when Sting first reached out to me, I was really hoping to give him a great run. I didn't know it would be quite this long, and it's been amazing. It's been everything we wanted to do, top to bottom. It's exactly what I think we were looking for. And honestly, you know, it wasn't like Sting's.
Oh, you got something to say?
This is 2 times in a row that we have heard Tony speaking that he has gone from the Federal Express guy down to grasping for words and repeating himself. Have they changed some type of the medication?
Well, again, we don't know what medication he would or wouldn't be on, especially on this day where he has a big meeting the next morning. But let's go back to this.
A political person. Sting's not a political animal or anything like that. He's definitely a very giving person, and he wants to give and give and give in pro wrestling. So it wasn't like when he came in, he had ever pushed to have an undefeated run. It wasn't like he ever tried to take the spotlight or wanted it. And it was really something I felt very strongly about.
No, you were just stupid enough to give it to him.
Of Sting coming back and having this run and giving him the undisputed spotlight and really give him the best run ever in AEW. Sting went out undefeated. When you look back, every match he ever had, Sting and Darby won. And it really built to a great moment in Phoenix when Sting and Darby won the championship. And that could have been it. But then, of course, it led to the setup for what I thought was the best send-off ever in pro wrestling, what we did tonight for Sting. And
let me stop it there. That's twice now because he did it in the tweet too. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I mean, there have been a few that were somewhat well thought of, and then of course guys went back on them. But if you count, has there ever been a great send-off where one of the guys didn't go back on it? But there have still been greater send-offs, for fuck's sake.
Terry Funk in Japan in '83 may be the best.
Flair had a great one until he realized he couldn't stay away and went back to TNA.
Yeah? Well, Tony thinks this is the best one ever.
This would be the send-off for some bank-addicted drug robber like that fucking Gage clown on the garbage circuit. This would be a send-off for him. Hey, let's throw everybody off the ladder and fucking break all the glass.
You're not accepting how perfect this night was. Let's go back to Tony.
Sting put himself in that position to totally put himself through 30 matches, 29 in AEW plus 1 in Japan, 30 matches in 3 years, the greatest comeback ever, I think, in sports. And for Sting to go out there.
I mean, Michael Jordan returned to the NBA after leaving it to try to play baseball. I think that comeback, I don't know.
Well,
he wasn't 60. He wasn't 61. I guess that changes it.
That changes things.
I believe at 64 years old, and we can say it now, he said time caught up to him, but I don't think it did. I think if it was getting close, I think Sting outran time and finished on top. And tonight was timeless and perfect in every way. So thank you very much for asking.
Yeah, thank you for giving it.
Let me stop there. I'll get some audio from Sting so you can hear what he had to say. But
well, and let me just make one more comment about this whole thing, and something that we kind of touched on a little bit earlier. When you say, well, he's 65, there's got to be smoke and mirrors. He can't go in there and have the 45-minute match with Flair. So this is the way they smoke and mirror it up, which kind of proves the point that I've been making for years and years since I've been talking about this stuff since they've been doing it. Garbage wrestling takes no talent. If you are willing to take the increased risk of getting hurt, you can have these garbage matches whether you can work or do anything or not. Because they're admitting it by saying, okay, the easiest thing for a 65-year-old man will be able to do to cover up for the fact that he can't do what he used to do is have a garbage match and fall through furniture. So they admit it. Whenever they have someone that cannot perform up to a professional standard, they put them in a garbage match because that's the great equalizer. You do not have to have talent at professional wrestling to have a garbage wrestling match. It's easy. Just be willing to get hurt. Prove my point.
Well, here is Sting and Darby Allin joining the media scrum with Tony Khan in the middle.
I'll worry about that in a minute. We'll worry about that later. But I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if you would come in. You didn't have to. This is above and beyond. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for Sting.
Thank you.
Sting and Darby. We were just singing your praises. Unbelievable. Thank you. First question.
Lyric Swinton, SNME Radio. Thank you, Sting, for an incredible career. Question for both you and Tony. So a lot of people have always talked about AEW's usage of legends and veterans, and there's so many people above the age of 50 who are honestly doing some of the best work of their careers in AEW. So for Tony, what do you hope to leave as a legacy for how wrestlers are treated, in the final stages of their career? And for Sting, what made AEW so special for you to want to do your retirement run here?
Let me stop it there. How many wrestlers? Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, what the fuck? Is she an idiot? What made it special? It's the only other place besides the WWE where somebody was willing to pay him $1 million. That's not hard to answer.
Well, first of all, I take it on a case-by-case basis, but tonight, first and foremost, this is the greatest case of all. This is the greatest of all careers, the career that spans the most history. And there's a generation of wrestlers. There's a generation of wrestling when wrestling was the biggest thing in the world that a lot of us grew up on. And there's one person going into tonight that was still wrestling. And for the past 3 years, he's carried this place. We're very fortunate the life Sting is pumped into this place, that we were the final stop on what is the greatest career of all time. So first and foremost, on a case-by-case basis, I just think of everything. It's in front of us. And tonight, the most important thing we've ever done was to give Sting the greatest send-off we could.
It's nice to be a fan. It's nice to give him this night the greatest career of all time. The
greatest career of all time. Move over, Bruno, Andre, Stone Cold, Rock, Hogan, Longzon, Londos, Strangler Lewis. It's Sting. Come on, you could even get by with saying one of the greatest of all time. That's subject to interpretation, and you're not giving a set quantity. But when come on. I mean, if I can't see Sting, but I would imagine he was even looking a little embarrassed, wasn't he?
He looks a little dazed. I mean, he just had a long match. Well, let's go to Sting.
And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to come here. I mean, the very first conversation I had with Tony really, really said a lot, because he just had something about him that just told me, I am going to make sure that you retire the right way, that you're going to go out the right way. I don't like the way you've been treated over here or over there. You will not be treated like that here. And I saw an opportunity, liked Tony, and I liked all the wrestlers, male, female, the whole package. So a lot of the same behind the scenes people from WCW way back when. And there's the brand just really seemed to fit me. I was their brand and they were mine. It's like, with WCW all those years, and then to be with TNA, it kind of felt that way, but not really. It never really fully got there for me. And then WWE, it was never quite fully there for me.
Can I stop you for a second? Or can I stop Sting for a second? I was in TNA between 2006, 2009, right? And I remember the last 2 years that I was there, both years, about whenever time Sting's contract would come up, I would hear from Dutch Mantel or somebody, well, Sting wants to finish up. He wants to quit, but Dixie keeps giving him a raise. She was paying him, and this is 15 years ago, $500,000 a year to come to fucking TV and do the pay-per-view and not even wrestle on all those tapings. So that was 5 days a month and not even that many matches. And here we are, 15 years later, this fucking guy has given him exponentially more money than that for exponentially fewer matches. No wonder he hadn't quit till now.
Let's go back to the man called Sting.
Here, the whole package. I had just a great appreciation for the whole package, and what a good fit. And I was right.
Hi, Joel Torres from Contralona. Congratulations. What a great retirement tonight. This question I asked Tony last Thursday on the media call. I want to ask you this question. Now that you've retired in ring action, what are your plans? Obviously going home, taking your break with your family, but are you wanting to be involved in AEW at some other capacity? Thank you.
Well, Tony has mentioned me staying on board in some form or fashion. We haven't really worked anything out there yet, but I'm sure we'll have some kind of conversation. And I am saying, maybe we'll see what happens. I have no interest in, being a manager or anything like that, or an agent. I don't want to do any of that kind of stuff. So
So what is he going to do for all the money that Tony's about to throw at him?
What would there be left? And that's the thing. Sting has never had any interest whatsoever in booking, agenting, matchmaking, far as I know, announcing, nothing else, and nothing other. And I mean, we worked closely together in TNA. He wouldn't even question the booking when it was shit stain. He was the only one of the top guys that would just, oh, well, whatever Vince wants. He wouldn't question anything. He has no interest in any of that shit.
See, that's why he was the guy that fit in so well here, because he wasn't someone who got
He didn't give a shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, he didn't care. Do what the fuck you want. I don't take this shit seriously. I mean, that's just the way he is. But what if he has no interest in and doesn't want to be, and probably wouldn't be good at being agent, producer, a trainer? How the fuck? Can you imagine Sting as a trainer? He barely learned. I mean, let's face it, Sting's been a huge star, but his in-ring has never been praised as being revolutionary. He learned the things he could do to get by. It's not like his work is fucking... So what is Tony thinking? I want to pay him to hang around with me. I can't bear not to see Sting once a week. What the fuck is he going to do? What does he need him to do?
Well, let's see what he says here.
He doesn't need to do anything. He's got millions of dollars that people like Tony have given him to do very little.
I'm not sure what I could offer, but
well, you're one of the greatest legends, not only certainly the greatest legend ever in AEW, and I think one of the greatest wrestlers, if not the greatest wrestler of all time. Nobody's ever had.
What? Wait, what the fuck? He's now the greatest wrestler of all time? What's going on here?
It takes such a jump. You're one of the greats of all time. You are the greatest of all time. All right, let's go back to Tony and Sting.
It has spanned more than yours, and what you've done for us here, we're all in your debt. So please, not only is the door always welcome and open for you, but I hope you will be back. And like I've said, we'll figure it out. We want you.
The Forbidden Door 3, the door is always welcome.
The door is always welcome.
Here.
Well, yep, I'm willing to have a talk.
God damn, he's like, please, can these motherfuckers leave me alone so I can go home and retire? I got too much fucking money. I'm not going to live long enough to spend it. Why do they keep wanting me?
This is literally the retirement match media scrub, and Tony's trying to talk him into staying.
Yeah, 15 years ago, he's like, what else can I do? I don't need. I'll finish up. No, here's more money. Well, what? Well, why would you turn down that much money for doing that little?
Just a little bit more from Sting, because this is probably the last time we will be hearing from him, unless he resigns to become a commentator. I guess he didn't rule that out.
Boy, howdy.
Corey Lee with the Wrestling Observer. I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the early part of your career. There was almost like a little bit of a crossroads with your career. You started obviously with Jim Hellwig, the Ultimate Warrior, and you kind of separated a little bit. He went his way.
Kind of separated a little bit. You kind of separated a little bit.
Went in opposite directions, never to again work in the same place, except for like 3 months when WCW hired everybody.
I want to talk about these crossroads you got to where you went a completely different direction.
Eddie Gilbert, Rick Steiner, the First Family. And I just want to talk about that part of your career and kind of at least kind of reflect a little bit on, now with hindsight, was obviously, was
in
the right thing to split up and do different stuff. And basically just reflect on that portion of your career.
Just reflect.
What a question.
What question? Just reflect. Can we have some reflection here?
He's like,
a little more reflecting.
I need to get this guy to talk about the Ultimate Warrior, and I have no question in mind that I can't come up with one. Let me just throw words together and ask him to reflect. Here's Sting reflecting.
Well, I think it was definitely good that we were both together to begin with, because, you know, he looked like a freak. You know, I was 265 pounds and I looked like a little kid compared to him. But both of us together were pretty intimidating. And, you know, we had a lot of people saying, you know, Maybelline Road Warriors. I don't know if you remember any of that, but yeah, but we thought, who cares? You know, we get a match with the Road Warriors, we hit the big time. And so, but, you know, I think it was good that we ended up splitting up. It was good that he went his way and I went mine. We were not meant to be together. We were meant to start together, and it got us in the door for sure. But he needed to be on his own, and I needed to be. We were going to kill each other, literally, on the road. Two roided out young men.
Denise Salcedo, Instinct Culture.
Well, that's what it was then. Two roided out.
And by the way, I appreciate him admitting that, but they were two completely different personalities and people. You can't deny that. I've never said Sting was a bad human being or a bad person, and definitely Warrior was. But can you imagine, he just gave me a visual, and I realized it never happened, did it? Was the Ultimate Warrior ever in the ring opposite Hawk and Animal ever in history?
Opposite them? No,
yes.
He teamed with them. I don't know about opposite them. I don't think so.
He teamed with them once in the WWF, right?
Survivor Series 90, they were on a team. I think they had a few other 6-man matches against Demolition as well.
I would pay any amount of money to see the Ultimate Warrior in the ring against Hawk and Animal, because if Warrior had tried to pull that bullshit with them, they would have beaten him to death. Working with him. They would have just worked with him like they worked with the fucking job guys in Georgia in 1983, and the Warrior would have been squealing like a pig stuck under a gate. Because I don't care what else you did not no-sell Hawk and Animal shit. And I would have loved to have seen him try to pull that fucking puffy face bullshit on them. But anyway, I digress. I just like to still to this day to see somebody kick the shit out of the Ultimate Warrior for principle. But go ahead.
Well, here's Sting finishing his steroid talk.
Guys, I mean, just shooting straight here. Yeah. That stopped in 1990 for me. So, yeah, it didn't stop for him, but it stopped for me.
Jesus Christ.
All right. Well, there's what we're going to hear today from the media scrum. Tony, as crazy looking as ever. Buy a comb. God damn it. Just get a comb or a brush. Or a Flowbee at this point. A Flowbee may work.
He's been going to Kyle O'Reilly's fucking barber, apparently.
You know, it's like that thing when guys would come up and they say, how do I get over with Vince? And Heyman would be like, you know, change your name to Kennedy. He'll love you. If you're coming back to AEW, how do I get over with Tony? Get the Tony hairdo. Just show up looking all frumpy and you get a push.
Look like you've been on some kind of fucking binge for 7 days.
Yes. Show up looking like you have NFL meetings in the morning. That's the look to show up with. But Jim, that was it.
That's some kind of code. They're calling it NFL now just to avoid people knowing what they're talking about. That's the kids' code these days. I got an NFL meeting in the morning.
Well, maybe so. And we hope that meeting went well for Tony and the Jacksonville Jaguars. But there it is, the retirement of Sting, AEW Revolution.
I'm sorry. I don't know what to say. You know, and again, I stand by everything I said on Darby Allin. Some of it might actually make the air because he's an idiot. And by the way, I didn't mention he would have missed the guy he was aiming at to begin with. He completely overshot him. But this whole company, Tony being a mark in the worst meaning of the word, has led them to realize that they can do whatever they want. And the old timers are going to get these guaranteed contracts that are going to have them being paid until they're in their 60s or beyond. Jericho already has. And the young guys are going to be allowed to let loose and do all this stupid bullshit because they think they're in a video game. And they don't care if they get hurt because they'll get paid either way. There's still that nagging aspect of the severe pain, but they don't care about that because they want to be on Jackass. So that's why that not only will this company never go any further than what it has, but why that it is slowly contributing to the erosion of the wrestling audience as a whole, because I said at the top of the review, subliminally, slowly, like erosion over a period of years, you see nobody's doing this shit, and it registers less and less when the somebody's do it. And that's why, as I mentioned before, and I will bring it up again, the WWE is winning this battle, running away with it, and fucking doing better than they have in years in terms of crowds, and more money than they ever have because of the finances these days. And it's half or a third of the audience they had 20 years ago. And they don't do all this mostly. But it doesn't matter what company people see wrestling as wrestling. It's either good wrestling or bad wrestling. Maybe low budget wrestling. But it's the same when everybody falls off a fucking ladder and hits the ground. Well, if they get up, it's fake. If they don't, well, that might have been real. But they always get up. They won't let us believe anything. That's why the business is slowly eroding. And the WWE in 10 years, owned by TKO, if they do find another trust fund baby to finance another promotion, AEW will be gone by then it'll be the same way. They will be fighting for a smaller audience than they have now because people will have had 10 more years to see this shit, and it'll register even less. So that's what they're doing for us. Thank you very much, guys. You've managed to take a business that had an audience of 10 or 12 million people and make it into a business that has an audience of 2 or 3 million people. I would like to give you a round of applause. And that applause sounds like an FFA meeting at the Holiday Inn, and that's about how big the crowds are going to be in 10 years if we keep seeing wrestling shows like this one. So fuck your fucking match of the year, and fuck your goddamn greatest pay-per-view of all time. It sucked.